Today I'm going to go over 5 different Dragapult EX lists for the post-rotation standard format, and then I'm going to play a game of Dragapult versus Raging Bolt in post-rotation standard format. If you want to learn anything about what post-rotation means, the standard format, playing the Pokemon TCG, anything like that, I do have an ultimate guide video on the channel, and that'll be in the description, should be towards the top of the description, also easy to find on my channel. So, um, I have 5 different Dragapult lists here built. I've been researching the Japanese meta from the City Leagues to the Champions Leagues, everything like that. And I've been testing a lot with the top decks. So most of my testing so far has been with Terrabox, with Dragapult variants, with Flareon Terrabox, and then some of the decks that I am playing those against. So let's start with Dragapult Dusknoir with Stamp. So, according to Japanese statistics, it looks like Stamp is about the 55% favorite for the ace spec, and then Sparkling Crystal's like 45%, maybe a little under 40. It might be more like 60 something, 30 something percent. So Unfair Stamp is more popular right now in the Japanese Dragapult lists. I've had some issues with the Unfair Stamp builds. Haven't exactly liked them as much as the Sparkling Crystal builds yet, but you know, we're early. I'm still working on it. So here's my current list that these lists kind of take them as if there was a tournament tomorrow, this is how I would build it, kind of thing. If you check back in 2 days, I'm probably going to have changed a couple of cards, so this is where I'm at right now when recording this video. And so far, I'm going to do these videos unedited, so I can just get them right up onto the internet. I record these and then I put it right out on YouTube and you guys can start watching it. So let's talk about Dragapult. With this first one, let's talk about Dragapult, the cards that are in it, what the deck tries to do, those kinds of things. So part of why Dragapult is so strong, and you'll see this across the Pokemon TCG in many, many eras of it, is that Stage 2 Pokemon are often strongest when they have a pre-evolution that offers some sort of value. So Dreepy, Dreepy can offer value at some points. It's nice that it has 70 HP instead of 60. It's nice that it has 1 retreat cost. There are times when you'll use a Petty Grudge to clean up like a Badoo knockout or a Bite to knock out a Badoo, something like that. But Dracloak is where we find that value that I'm talking about inside of the evolution line. Because Dracloak has Recon Directive. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put one of them into your hand, put the other on the bottom of the deck. So it's almost like a draw 2. It's look at the top 2 and you get the best one out of it. And the more Dracloaks you set up, the more chances you have at that Recon Directive. So that is most of the deck's on-board draw ability, with the other portion of it being Pheasantipity's Flip the Script, which is, of course, kind of controllable by your opponent. When they knock something out, as long as they knock out with damage, you get to draw 3 cards. But the Dracloak Recon Directive is the reliable draw that you will have no matter what, under any conditions. And then, of course, Dragapult EX, which we talk a lot about it being one of the best attackers in the game. And there's multiple facets to it. So it has a good amount of health at 320, and it also has no weakness, which is typically an advantage that dragon Pokemon have had ever since fairy Pokemon were removed. Because back in the day, dragon Pokemon were weak to other dragons, and then they introduced fairy. They were weak to fairy, then they deleted the fairy type, and now dragons are weak to nothing. Of course, Lily's Clefairy, which is definitely worth mentioning for a second here. Lily's Clefairy is kind of Creatures Inc.'s unofficial apology for fairy Pokemon, because it has the ability Fairy Zone that says the weakness of each of your opponent's dragon Pokemon in play is now psychic. So you get to treat some of your psychic Pokemon like fairies when you have this Lily's Clefairy, and then of course that hits Dragapult for weakness. So other than that, Dragapult has no weakness, which is a very big part. So 320 health, no weakness. That's great. Then Phantom Dive is what we're looking at. So for 2 energy, you essentially put 260 damage on the board. But because of things that are available to us in the card pool, like Monkey Dory with Adrenabrain that moves damage, Dusclops and Dusknoir, which we'll get to, that place damage. Hawlucha, which I believe I have included in one of the other Dragapult deck lists. We'll see if I'm correct about that when we go through them. I've been editing these deck lists a lot and updating them, like I said, with how I would play them at this very moment. You have a lot of creative damage placements that you can do with Phantom Dive. So maybe the first Phantom Dive you do takes 0 knockouts, but then on the next time you Phantom Dive, you take 4 prize cards. So the goal, I look at Dragapult decks as, if I can attack twice with Phantom Dive with the same Dragapult, I'm probably winning the game. If I get 2 Phantom Dives out of the same Dragapult, that Pokemon is putting out 520 damage over the course of those 2 turns. So that's kind of what I'm thinking when I go into a game with Dragapult, is I want to be able to Phantom Dive twice with the same Dragapult, and if I do, then that game's going to be super easy if that Dragapult takes 2 hits to actually go down. Of course, that's kind of why they printed Lily's Clefairy EX, so that players now have a reasonable out to try to take down Dragapult in 1 hit, so it doesn't get that mega value. So, with Pokemon, and Dragapult EX is a metagame definer, because Phantom Dive's 6 damage counter placement causes Pokemon with 60 health to be played less, or they have to be played in combination with Bravery Charm, or, you have to play the 70 HP version of a Pokemon if there is one, so, like, namely Charmander, so the Charmanders don't get KO'd. So yeah, Phantom Dive, great attack, very efficient placement of damage. And depending on the build of the deck, so if we look to pre-rotation builds of Dragapult, you'll see that a lot of them were planning not to use Phantom Dive until turn 3. So on turn 1, going second, you would go bench a bunch of Dreepies and Duskull, use Badoo's Itchy Pollen, which is 10 plus Item Lock. So Item Lock to try to slow your opponent down. Bench your stuff, Itchy Pollen. Next turn, you go Lance for 3 Dracloaks, evolve them, Recon Direct, attach an energy somewhere, Itchy Pollen. Your opponent knocks out the Badoo, then you start swinging with Phantom Dive. The problem, of course, comes in if your opponent is playing a deck that's a little faster and they just go knock out Badoo right away, and now you're left with all these Dreepies, no energy on the board maybe, if you had to retreat into the Badoo. So that's kind of where the Sparkling Crystal comes in. That's why I really like the Sparkling Crystal build, like I was mentioning. But looking at this Unfair Stamp build, I have Crispin as energy acceleration. I have EXP share as kind of energy conversion. So what I'm kind of thinking, actually, I'll wait to go on to the EXP share. Let me explain Dusclops and Dusknoir first. So Dusclops and Dusknoir, if you're not aware, are very, very broken cards. They force your opponent to take a prize card because you knock it out yourself, and then you put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Or with Dusknoir, you put 13 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So these are great because Dusknoir can pop something on your opponent's bench like a Dracloak or a Monkey Dory. But it could also hit the active. So Phantom Dive plus Curse Blast at the active knocks out just about everything in the game. That's 330 damage. So if the game is going at a prize trade of like 2 prize, 2 prize, 2 prize, it often happens that Dusknoir single prize does not end up mattering in the prize trade. So let's say you and your opponent are both at 6 prizes remaining. You pop a Dusknoir, put 130 on the active, Phantom Dive knockout. You take 2 prizes. Your opponent took 1 from the Dusknoir. It doesn't matter that they're in a prize trade now of 5 to 6. Or a 5 to 4, they got that 1 extra prize from Dusknoir, because if they just take 2 prizes every turn and you take 2 prizes every turn, you will win the game before they do. That's how the prize trade and the tempo works out. So, but what Dusknoir also does is it activates cards. So in this particular list, the only card it's activating is going to be Counter Catcher. So you can put yourself behind on prizes on purpose to use Counter Catcher, but most of the time you're going to Itchy Pollen, your opponent will knock out that Badoo, and that will also activate the Counter Catcher. Of course, Badoo is very good. Itchy Pollen 10, Item Lock, very, very strong. Monkey Dory, Adrenabrain, the Dark Energy. That's also kind of why we play the Crispin, so we can get like an energy onto Dragapult and energy on the Monkey. But we also play the Crispin because it helps accelerate to Blood Moon Ursaluna, which notably, Blood Moon Ursaluna can attack Milotic EX. So Milotic EX would normally wall Dragapult out, and you would have to try to knock them out with like the Cursed Blasts and Monkey Dory damage and like a Dracloak attack because it can't be hit by Terra Pokemon, but Blood Moon Ursa Luna is not a Terra Pokemon, so it can hit Milotic EX, and it's also just a great efficient attacker, especially as the game goes on. Monkey Dory's Adrenabrain goes really, really well with Phantom Dive as well, like I was alluding to earlier, because let's say you're playing a Dragapult mirror match and they Phantom Dive you. If they spread their damage around on the bench, you can like fully heal one of those Pokemon maybe with Adrenabrain. But usually they'll hit the active with Phantom Dive, maybe knock something out with the 6 damage counter placement, and then you can move Adrenabrain damage. You can move it from your own Dragapult to one of your opponent's other Pokemon, help with your Phantom Dive damage. You can also help get around weird bits of math. So, like, there's a lot of 210 HP Pokemon in the format. You could play Hawlucha, you could play Monkey Dory, you could play Defiance Band, you could play Kieran, you could play Vitality Band, you could play some combination of them. But Monkey Dory, as long as that Dragapult doesn't get one shot, or if your opponent is also spreading damage in some way, or like if they're also using Badoo Itchy Pollen, even that Itchy Pollen 10 damage can be something that you want to move with Adrenabrain to help your Dragapult reach those 210 knockouts. So I started talking about the energy makeup of the deck. So since we're not playing Sparkling Crystal, and also another thing to really note about post-rotation Dragapult is we do not have Luminion anymore, and we don't have Forest Hill Stone anymore. So the supporter lineup is something I've been struggling with a lot for post-rotation Dragapult. I've even considered like playing Pokegears or something, because Dragapult, I loved the consistency of Dragapult pre-rotation where you could just Luminion for your turn 2 Lance, or that turn that you need the Crispin, you could Stone for it or something like that. We don't have that here right now. So I am playing 2 Crispin so that we could find it more consistently when we need it. And we are also playing an Unfair Stamp build, right? So you kind of have that almost supporter draw power of Unfair Stamp. Unfair Stamp being you can use this card only if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Your opponent shuffles draw 2, you shuffle draw 5. So Unfair Stamp is kind of like a re-roll at finding your Crispin or your Boss or your Jacques sometimes, because it lets you shuffle draw 5 almost like a supporter would, but it doesn't use up your supporter for turn. But it also puts your opponent down to 2 cards. So it's really powerful if following your opponent's first KO, they're at 5 prizes, they have like 8 cards in their hand, you just go stamp to 2. And from there, you can go like Phantom Dive. That's amazing. And that's when this deck is at its strongest. It's just, if they take the knockout immediately, you have to go Candy. And you have to have already had an energy on your Dragapult. And you have to have another energy to attach now. Or you have to have Crispin this turn. So that's kind of explaining the trainers of this deck and how I'm kind of conceptualizing that I want to play out my turns with this deck. And that's also the value of Unfair Stamp, is that you have this incredible comeback after the first KO potential. You know, like I said, you go Itchy Pollen, your opponent takes a knockout, and then if you can respond to that with Stamp Phantom Dive, your opponent is typically going to be in a bad position from that point. And I should talk about the Bravery Charm a little bit. So the Bravery Charm I've been seeing coming from the Japanese lists, and you could either go like a third Duskull in this spot is something I've been experimenting with as well. The Bravery Charm is situationally good for a lot of things. It can block your Duskull from being knocked out by Phantom Dive in a mirror match, which is useful. It could turn your Blood Moon Ursa Luna into a 310 HP Pokemon. It can put Pheasantipity out of range from some knockouts. It could put Monkey Dory out of range from an opposing Cursed Blast. It could even put Badoo out of range from becoming a liability on the bench in some situations, because it's really easy for decks playing Monkey Dory to just get a free prize off of that Badoo. So the Bravery Charm also adds another tool that gives some value to Arven, since we're not playing Crystal in this deck, and we're not, Forest Hill Stone doesn't exist anymore. The Bravery Charm is one more kind of value piece for Arven to go grab for you. So now that we've talked about most of this version of the list, let's go talk about Dragapult Dusknoir Crystal and what I like about this one. So with this version, I have tried to go as aggressively consistent as possible. I am planning my turn 2 to always be Candy Dragapult attack. And so that's what I want out of this. Oh, something I forgot to mention in the first list that I should mention. Let's go back to the stamp for a moment here. It's about TM Evo, because I think I'll get some questions about TM Evo. So one of the problems with TM Evo is that you have to attach an energy to the Pokemon that you're Evoing with. So that forces you to next turn need Crystal for your Dragapult, or it forces you next turn to need Crispin for your Dragapult, or you had to have Evo on the active and EXP share on the bench Dreepy, or the bench Dracloak at that point now, right? Um, to get the turn 2 Phantom Dive. I think it can work. I think we will still see decks with TM Evo in it. But right now, that's kind of like the reason I'm not playing TM Evo in this build or in the Crystal build. I think it could work better in the Crystal build than it could in the Unfair Stamp build, because you do have the Crystal, so you don't need the XP share or the Crispin necessarily to get that attack off. But something else I was thinking, like, okay, if turn 1 we go Arvin for like Poffin plus Evo and Evo up, and then turn 2 we need the Crystal, then we're kind of hoping to like start the game with double Arvin in our hand. I guess the recon directives also help you find that next Arvin, but that was also something else I'm thinking, like without Luminion, how consistent is it to expect the game to start out with double Arvin? So that got me thinking, do we play 2 TM Evos if that's the route we're going for? Do we play Pokegear? Do we play Call Bell to find the Arvin? So there's a lot going on in my mind about Dragapult. I'm just trying to play the most solid, consistent list. And so, like I said, with this Crystal list, I'm going for the most consistency. So I'm not doing Monkey Dory, Dark Energy. I have things like the Terra Orb in here. I have Artisan and Nest Ball. I have 2 of the Brock's Scouting, which this helps with that idea of having 2 Arvins off the bat, right? So if we're going second and we go Arvin for Poffin Sparkling Crystal, or let's say we need Rescue Board, we go Poffin Rescue Board. Then next turn we need another Arvin for Candy Sparkling Crystal, right? Or um, if you do go Arvin for Poffin and Sparkling Crystal, hold the Crystal, then that's also susceptible to getting the Crystal Ionoed away potentially. So Brock Scouting, if you have a hand where you start with like Arvin plus Brock, with a lot of hands you can easily go Brock for double Dreepy as to hold the Arvin for next turn's Candy Crystal or Terra Orb Crystal, whatever combination of cards you need there. So I'm really focusing on my turn 1s and turn 2s, which is what I tend to do in an early deck building process in the formats. I'm trying to do minimal techs, max consistency, and just thinking about what's my focus, what are my goals in the opening turns, and how do I make that happen as consistently as possible. And from there, as the format develops, I can get into techs that are necessary or discover new things about deck engines, and learn, okay, well, this is great for the early game, but now I'm missing this in the late game, so I have to find a cut for it, those kinds of things. I'm also trying to be aware of the switching outs. I feel like decks are not really playing a lot of switching outs right now, and Wellspring Ogerpon is so popular with Sob. However, there's a couple things to note about Sob. One, you could just forego benching the Pokemon that are bad to get Sob locked, which Sob on Wellspring says 20 and you can't retreat next turn. It was another thing is number 2, it was scary last format because they could infinitely Sob lock something. They had double turbo energy to reduce the damage the Sob was doing, and they also had Alakazam, Radiant Alakazam, to then move the damage every turn, so they could like infinitely lock something in the active. Although that is much less possible now, it's still bad to get Sob locked until your opponent decides to let up the lock, right? You don't want your opponent to be in that kind of control ever. So I am thinking about that, with the one switch, the one Turo. So that's kind of my list right now for the Crystal build. Just trying to be consistent, trying to use Phantom Dive on starting on turn 2, and Phantom Dive every turn from that, with a little bit of backup from the Dusknoirs. Now let's get into some more interesting stuff. So we talked about TM Evo. Um, I tried to think what's the best way to build TM Evo Dragapult right now, and I'm thinking it might be Iron Thorns for a few reasons. So, number one, Iron Thorns is going to slow your opponent down, whereas Badoo can slow your opponent down, but you can't Itchy Pollen and Evo at the same time. You can TM Evo and have Iron Thorns in the active with the initialization ability, which says as long as this Pokemon's in the active, Pokemon with a rule box in play have no abilities except for future Pokemon. So having this, so yeah, I kind of like this idea. I'm not sure that this is good, but it's the kind of the outcome of the idea that I had, right? Like, okay, if you could build a Dragapult deck that can TM Evo and slow your opponent down at the same time, and be like maybe a heavy Crispin deck, and have a tanky Pokemon in the active that uses TM Evo. It also needs to be able to do well against the Terra Box deck, which Iron Thorns hits Wellspring for weakness. It needs to be able to get around walls. Iron Thorns does great against walls because it shuts off their ability, like Farigiraf and Milotic. And then it also needs to be able to beat opposing Dragapult decks, which is where the Lily's Clefairy can hopefully come in. So yeah, this is Dragathorn's cornerstone. And then I also have very similar build, just with Monkey Dory in the deck and a couple extra pieces of consistency spread out, as opposed to the cornerstone being in there. So these are lesser tested so far. And then I also have Draga Terrabox, which this is not very tested either so far. This one's just an idea, kind of. But I have seen Dragapult Terraboxes from Japanese City League, so they are a thing. And of course, we know that Charizard Noctowl Terra boxes are a thing as well. We've seen that. That was even in top 16 of the Champions League Fukuoka, which you can find all of those results on limitlesstcg.com. So yeah, here this is a Dragapult Noctowl Terra box deck. Um, that again, it's looking to get those turn 2 attacks, but you have a lot of option of turn 2 attacks. You also have, so the Noctowl decks I believe are going to be wanting to go first. Um but if you go second, you still have options. You have Itchy Pollen. You even have opportunity to use Torrential Pump if you have like that crazy of a start. But typically you just want to fill your board, and then turn 2 start evolving Noctowls, finding the pieces you need, whether that's Candy Crystal and Dragapult, whether that's Crystal, Crispin, Torrential Pump, or maybe Unified Beatdown plus Boss to chase something. So there's a lot of possibility to work with Terra boxes in general. Just wanted to share this idea. And like I said, today for the gameplay, we'll be doing Dragapult Dusknoir with Crystal, and we'll be going against this first place Raging Bolt Ogerpon Noctowl list from a recent City League event. Okay, so we're starting this gameplay as if Dragapult won the coin flip and chose to go second. And also, this is on tcgmasters.net. Okay, if you want to use this website, it's great for testing. I just imported the deck lists from the deck lists we just looked at, and now we're playing a fully automated simulator against myself. So, we've got Fan Rotom start. That's beautiful. We've got Nest Ball for the Ogerpon. Amazing. Let's start with Nest Ball for Ogerpon first and Teal Dance. We draw into Crispin. Not really needed right now. So Fan Call is going to get us at least 2 Hoot Hoots. Probably 2 Hoot Hoot, 1 Noctowl. We already have a Noctowl in our hand. It could just be triple Hoot Hoot as well. Let's go Fan Call. We'll go 1 Hoot Hoot, 2 Hoot Hoot. Think about what else we'll need on the bench. We're going to need a Latias. We're going to need a Raging Bolt. Yeah, we'll just go 2 Hoot Hoot, 1 Noctowl for now. And next turn, we can find the Raging Bolt. We needed the Ogerpon on the board because Noctowl needs a Terra Pokemon to be in play to activate its ability. We might not even end up needing Latias next turn because I might just attach active so we could retreat. We're playing against Dragapult, so we always want to assume that the item lock could be coming. So with Noctowl next turn, it's going to be tricky to get into the Raging Bolt without items next turn. Let's see what our options are going to be. Not very many, but we did need to use that Nest Ball. Like I said, it had to be on, uh, it had to be for the Teal Mask Ogerpon. So let's thin out the deck here. We'll grab, we actually want a Fighting since we already have Lightning in the discard. And then I'm going to grab another Grass Energy because what might happen, it could happen that we need to attack with Fan Rotom next turn. It could happen that we want to attack with Teal Mask next turn. We could also draw into another Teal Mask, and then we could have 2 Teal Dances to try to find Raging Bolt if we want to use the Sadas. But we will also have Fan Rotom as a possible attack, and we could always Noctowl for the Stadium to satisfy the requirement of Assault Landing if we need to. So I could attach this energy, the Fighting energy here, and then I could always retreat it next turn if we are going to be doing a Sada and I want to accelerate extra energy. So I think it's correct to go Fighting energy attached here and then pass. Okay, on this side, the Iono is fine. Iono turn 1, draw 6 more cards plus top deck gives us a pretty good chance of having to turn 2 Arven. The only thing we don't have here, of course, is the Badoo. We have the energy attachment retreat, everything like that. We could Ultra Ball. I also do want to use this Hawlucha, I think, because it would be really nice to Hawlucha the Ogerpon, but then it wouldn't be very nice to Hawlucha the Hoot Hoot, because then they'll just evolve that specific Hoot Hoot, and then it removes the relevance of the flying entry damage counter on it. So actually, I might just Ultra Ball this Hawlucha and leave it in the discard so that I could just Night Stretcher for it later when needed. So we'll go get rid of Hawlucha, get rid of Fire Energy, prize check the energy. Okay, so we didn't prize any energy. That's good. We have Crystal. That's good. Crystal's very important. We prized 2 Arven. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and grab Badoo, bench Streepy, attach energy. We won't retreat yet, and then Iono. Nice. We get the Arven for next turn. That's beautiful. We also get a Nest Ball, which could be used for Pheasantipity next turn. So we're going to go bench Duskull, retreat into Badoo. We're going to hold this Nest Ball and Itchy Pollen. All right, so off of this new hand, we don't have Noctowls. First action's always going to be Teal Dance, see what we get. It's Fez. Fez doesn't do anything for us yet, but we did luckily we didn't get Noctowl, but we did get Area 0 over here, so we can Area 0 Assault Landing, take the first KO. That means that we'll go to uneven prizes, but if the opponent ever needs to pop a Dusk, then we'll go back to even prizes, so that's something to think about. We could also retreat and attack with Teal Mask, because that could then force them to pop the Duskull if they wanted to take this knockout on the Teal Mask Ogerpon this turn. Yeah, so if we go with Fan Rotom, we do leave a single prize active, which is great. Yeah, this is a tricky one. Going with Assault Area 0 plus Assault Landing knockout or Myriad Leaf Shower knockout. I think we'll go with the Assault Landing. And I'm gonna hold everything else. Like, I would love to bench a Raging Bolt maybe and attach energy to it, but no, actually I wouldn't, because then the opponent Phantom Dives, puts 10 on Ogerpon, 40 on Raging Bolt, 10 somewhere else, and then Ogerpon and Raging Bolt are both within range of 200. So, yeah, nothing else to do with this hand. We're just gonna play areas, excuse me, play Area 0 and Assault Landing. Alright, so we'll send up Dreepy. And the first thing I'm going to do is Nest Ball for Fez. And then Fez for 3. We do this before Recon Directive because Fez gives us 3 cards. We don't have to make any decisions with those 3 cards. With Dracloak's Recon Directive, we do have to make a decision. We have to choose between one of 2 cards. We get more information by first using Flip the Script. Okay, Flip the Script doesn't give us anything, and it gives us Counter Catcher. We did want Counter Catcher. But the issue here is that we don't have enough cards to for Arvin to find us everything that we need. So we'll evolve here. We'll go Recon Directive. Let's look at what we have here. So Arvin can get us Candy and Crystal, but we do not have a Dragapult, unfortunately. Night Stretcher or Vessel, they both get us energies, actually. Let's go looking at my hand to see what our discard options are with the Vessel. Arvin will probably end up getting an Escape Board plus Poffin. Poffin gets another Dreepy plus a Badoo, and we item lock again. I think that's what's going to have to be, unfortunately. We could actually counter catcher up the Ogerpon and Badoo at the Ogerpon to place that 10 damage counters that we need there. So let's go Vessel. We don't need that second Duskull. Okay. So we're going to Vessel away this Duskull. Prize. Okay, so we're good. We have everything that we want there. Arvin for... Oh, misplay. We don't... So now that we've gone into this... we've gone into this route, we know that we're no longer attacking with Dragapult EX. What we want to do here is first evolve Dracloak and Recon Directive before the Arvin. So we're not looking for more energies with Dracloak. We already took the Vessel. So we will go ahead and do this, thin those energies out of the deck. But before we go Arvin for Poffin Rescue Board, we want to Recon Directive. So we'll Recon Directive, and that gets us a switch. So we could take the switch instead of getting Rescue Board, or we could take the Dracloak so that we have that guaranteed evolve next turn. I'm going to take the switch because what this allows us to do now is we can go Crystal Poffin. And also, we're not playing against a deck that we're expecting to retreat lock us, so the switch is less important. We grab Badoo Dreepy, evolve Dusclops, switch into the Badoo, attach energy on one of the Dracloaks, and then we counter catcher Ogerpon and Itchy Pollen. This is also nice because that Fan Rotom is now set up for a Phantom Dive knockout as well. So we Itchy Pollen here, 10. Okay, so the opponent is item locked yet again. They can free retreat with Latios. First things first we'll do as the Raging Bolt player is Teal Dance. We get another item that we cannot play. We could knock out here with Ogerpon, or we can knock out with Fan Rotom. Those are basically our two choices. And because this Teal Mask Ogerpon would be knocked out very easily by a Phantom Dive, we don't want to just give that to the opponent. So I'm going to hold on to the Latios for now. I'm going to attach Fighting Energy, get it into the discard, retreat into Fan Rotom. And yeah, there's nothing else here to do except for Salt Landing Knockout. So Raging Bolt, although they're not really doing much, does take the prize lead. Now, we're going to go ahead and promote Dracloak. The Iono is actually amazing here. Iono is our best supporter this turn because the opponent's had 8 cards in hand, 4 prizes. So what I'm looking to do here is I could go for knocking out all Hoot Hoots. That would be a good plan. And the way we would do that is we could knock out one with Dusknoir, and then we could Hawlucha knock out the other with Phantom Dive. We could also counter catcher one of the Hoot Hoots up and knock out the other. We could also go for a 4-prize turn here, where we leave the opponent with just Fan Rotom. That's the best case scenario, in which case we would counter catcher up the Ogerpon, Hawlucha 10 to the Hoot Hoots, Dusknoir one of the Hoot Hoots, and then Phantom Dive, knock out Ogerpon and a Hoot Hoot. So the opponent would be at 3, and we would be at 2. But they would also just be left with a Fan Rotom on the board and nothing else, which is very important to that strategy. Okay, so we are going to attach Psychic here, attach Sparkling Crystal there. Keep the bench spot open for the Hawlucha. That's also why we didn't take the Night Stretcher earlier. We left the Night Stretcher in the deck. We want a Pheasantipede after the Iono. That is unless we decided that we wanted to go boss and guarantee this instead of the Iono. instead of looking for Counter Catcher, because Counter Catcher, we don't have anything that can like exactly search it, so we have to draw into it for that play. So if the best play is bring up the Ogre Pawn, then we could actually try to do this turn without Iono. It comes down to a decision of, is eradicating their board without disrupting their hand still worth it? I'd venture to say that it probably is. So that would mean if boss is our ideal supporter and we're going to see, can I get through this turn by playing boss instead of Iono as a supporter, then we would go flip the script, recon. If after that we still have to Iono, then now we're in a worse spot. But I think we do this. we have a very, very, very strong play available, and I think we go for it. So we're going to start with flip the script. We're going to forego the hand disruption as of now, see if we can get there with the guaranteed boss. Now, if I flip the script and we see a counter catcher, I think we just go counter catcher Iono, right? And it's important to recon. Oh, no, we're not reconning yet. It's important to save the recons because, like I mentioned earlier, they are choices where the flip the script isn't so much a choice. So we'll start with flip the script. And this is great. We're going to be able to at least do a lot of what we want to do. So we have the Ultra Ball already. The Ultra Ball guarantees either a Dusknoir or a Dragapult. I mean, it could even be for a Dracloak, but I don't think the Ultra Ball ever ends up being for a Dracloak here. So yeah, now we're going to go Recon Directive. We find Arven and Dracloak. We're going to grab the Dracloak. We go Recon Directive. We get another Ultra Ball. That's great. And the only thing we're missing right now is Hawlucha, but we could just knock out double Hoot as well. Instead, we could forego knocking out the Ogre Pawn potentially. Let's bench Dracloak, Recon Directive. Okay, so we're not going to be able to get the Hawlucha play if we are going with boss's orders as our desired supporter for turn. But we can Ultra Ball, Dusknoir, knock out a Hoot, knock out that and that. I mean, we'll leave them with one Hoot as their only Pokemon. We'll still take 4 prizes, so I believe we'll win off of that. Also, benching the Blood Moon Ursaluna will be good because then if they take 2 prizes, we have this attacker that can knock out a Raging Bolt. So I think I have the route to victory here. Okay, so we'll go Ultra Ball, get rid of Candy, and get rid of Rescue Board for Dusknoir. We get Dusknoir first because we're going to take a prize from doing this. So we Cursed Blast a Hoot, knocking out one of them. And then we we Ultra Ball. I was thinking about what the discard's going to be, what we're going to discard off of Ultra Ball. So we're going to Ultra Ball away. We don't need Duskull anymore because if they take 2 prizes, we can't use Duskull. And we likely don't need Iono anymore because we're just trying to win next turn. So we Ultra Ball for the Dragapult. We evolve the Dragapult. We bench the Blood Moon. We boss this. And then we Phantom Dive for 3 more prizes. I'm sorry, for 3 more prizes. When we switched screens immediately, I was like, wait, 3? So yeah, Dragapult is now winning at a 2-3 trade. So on Raging Bolt side now, we need to take a knockout with Raging Bolt. We finally have items for 1 turn. Alright, so we'll bench Raging Bolt, we'll bench Latias because we need to retreat the Hoot while it's still a basic Pokemon. We'll bench Pheasantipity. Vessel away Slitherwing. We'll grab Grass and Biting in the deck. Nest Ball for Teal Mask. Nest Ball for another Raging Bolt for Sada purposes. Now that we've thinned the deck out of those things, we're just trying to hit Sada, Pheasantipity. Crispin also works, but we also have Ultra Ball for Noctowl, so we have the Sada guaranteed. And we'll Teal Dance. Okay, so we'll retreat this before it evolves. Yeah, Sada gets us more than Crispin does, so we'll go Ultra Ball away. Lightning. and fighting for Noctowl. Noctowl, we needed to get that Teal Mask down so that we could use the Noctowl, of course. Don't forget that. You need to have a Terra Pokemon down for Noctowl. We will grab Sada plus Prime Catcher. Okay, so I think we had a better route here, so I'm going to undo. Yeah, we have a better line of play, I believe. So it comes down to not discarding the Slitherwing. That's what the better play comes down to. So we're going to Vessel away an Ultra Ball. I don't think we need 2 Ultra Balls. We definitely need a Fighting Energy and a Grass. We Nest Ball for Teal Mask. We Teal Dance. We get the Sada, so I mean, that's great. We didn't need to get the Sada off of that. But what I'm thinking is we want to use Slitherwing to knock out the Blood Moon Ursaluna. So we're going to swing with a single prizer and knock out Blood Moon. Although we do damage our own Slitherwing, but I think this might be better than Raging Bolt hit Dragapult, and then, yeah, is this just playing Bravery Charm? Let's see. Okay, so yeah, we literally just scoop if we go Raging Bolt to the face, because then their Blood Moon comes up for 0 energy and wins the game. So this has to be the play. It has to be Slitherwing. And we're going to Prime Catcher the Blood Moon Ursaluna. So let's bench Slitherwing. We actually end up not needing this Nest Ball because we don't need another Raging Bolt. We go Professor Sada, Fighting, and now we have the manual attached Fighting here. We actually don't even need to retreat the Hoot because, like I said, we are going to play Prime Catcher. And the Burning Turbulence knocks out the Blood Moon with Burn. So they also won't get to draw off of Pheasantipity, which is something. But we also should evolve the Hoot into Noctowl, actually. Yeah, we are going to evolve it. It's just we didn't need to retreat it prior to doing this because we don't need the free retreat from Latios anymore. So we'll Ultra Ball away, double Teal Mask for Noctowl. Noctowl, get Prime Catcher plus Jamming Tower. Jamming Tower doesn't... Yeah, Jamming Tower turns off the crystal, so that's good. Prime Catcher up this. Jamming Tower. Burning Turbulence. It does 240, and they're burned, so they'll be knocked out between turns with Burn. But I think we... Let's see. The Jamming Tower could be a problem here. Okay, so we'll send this up. We don't get to use Fez because they knocked out with Burn. I have 2 prizes left. Okay, so we'll start with Recon Directive, Dragapult, Recon Directive, Fire Energy. Okay, that should win us the game. So we go Arven for Counter Catcher. Great. Evolve, Fire, Retreat, Counter Catcher, Noctowl, and then we knock out Noctowl plus Slitherwing. And Dragapult wins. Okay, so if you have any questions about that gameplay, please leave it in the comments. If you have any questions about the deck lists, please leave those in the comments as well. This is the Dragapult deck list we were playing with right there. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this kind of video. If you'd like to dive further into Dragapult, you could check out my Metafy and book a session with me. And I also have the complete competitive fundamental masterclass on Metafy as well. I highly suggest it. Over 100 students have bought into that so far. And, you know, I just got a message previous to recording this, or pretty recently. Somebody who purchased my masterclass, then booked one 30-minute one-on-one session, went to their first regional, and made it to day 2. They said they were super happy with it, and I get a lot of messages like that. So if you're interested in the masterclass, if you're interested in coaching, feel free to comment down here, message me on Discord, message me on Twitter, wherever we're connected, and we'll see if I could help you out with your Pokemon TCG goals. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on CLAO's Network.